Have you ever written an essay that no one would publish? If so, what was it about?
Well, I had a hard time getting the first essay I ever wrote. It was in my 20s, and I just sat down. There was a new translation of Suetonius' 12 Caesars, and I read that, and I was so overwhelmed by what it had to say about sex and power, about the first 12 Caesars, that I wrote an essay that nobody would publish for about 6 years. And then finally I got it into the Nation, because they sometimes don't read the stuff.
Now, you're about to come out with your autobiography. Have you discovered things about yourself in writing your autobiography that you never knew or understood before?
Well, my role model was Lord Mountbatten, who told his biographer, a man called Ziegler, said, "I'm not going to influence you in any way, and you can't publish it until after I'm dead. The only thing I'm going to tell you, which you will discover, but it must be your discovery, I have never been wrong." It's uncanny how right I was about so many things. I have thought of calling it a tissue of lies, which would also include all the books in which I appear, autobiographies or biographies of other people. There is nothing that you remember that seems to be correct or conforms with anybody else's memory of the same event. It's just eerie. And when it comes to writing history, I mean, we all depend upon the press, at least history written in the age of the printing press. You write about Lincoln, well, primary source will be newspapers. I mean, reconstruct my life from what the New York Times had to say about me over the years, or Franklin Roosevelt, to put it on a great scale. You would have a very distorted view. Between malice and incompetence, everything is blurred. So I find it's a very odd feeling, reviewing your own life and really realizing you weren't there at all.
In reviewing your own life, as a youngster growing up, as we said in the introduction, you spent a lot of time with your grandfather, Senator Gore. What lessons in American government and politics did you learn from him?
Well, he was pretty sardonic. He said if there was any race other than the human race, I would go join it. This kindly old Senator Gore, the blind man, or he thought he was such a sweet old man, and he was like W.C. Fields in his quiet hatred of the human race. But he was a very useful senator. One piece of advice he gave me, which I've tried to take in life, but I'm not very good at it. He said the toughest thing in politics is to allow somebody to think he's making a fool of you. He said it's very important you learn that, because then you don't tip your hand. And he said it's difficult, and I found it very difficult.
Many people, of course, would like to know what is going to be the next installment of your historical novel series.
So would I. I'm committed to do one more, and I thought I might do the age of Franklin Roosevelt, but my memoirs seem to be covering that. The period I've always wished I'd got into was the 1840s. Henry Clay and President Polk, who really was our first great imperialist president who picked the war with Mexico in 1846. And that was when Lincoln was on the right side of everything. He deplored that war, and for all the right reasons, and then totally reversed himself when he was defending his own course in the Civil War. So it could be the 1840s.
I've always wanted to know that since I've read Burr a couple of times. Why did you choose to look at the Jeffersonian age through the eyes of the outcast?
Well, it's a lot more interesting. You don't go to somebody's friend to find out about him, do you? The nice thing about Burr was, of all the founding fathers, he was the only one without cant, to use a polite word. he just, he was very dry and very sharp and to the point, and was not taken in by anyone's rhetoric, including his own. And he was so funny. I mean, when Jefferson did his first State of the Union, and when they were inaugurated side by side in the Capitol, he wrote his daughter about it and said that it was very interesting because Jefferson had a very weak voice. And finally, he stopped altogether giving speeches and would just send his messages to Congress for them to read. But he said, you know, after Mr. Jefferson took the oath of office, he turned to me and he read to me his State of the Union. He said nobody else heard a word of it except me. And I felt like the whole country. I was nodding and applauding him. And then he noted all the grammatical errors that Jefferson had made.
Is there a reason why you skipped the whole Revolutionary War in your look at American history?
Well, I come in at the end of it. I come in at when the army is being mustered out in Francis's Tavern in New York. I bring together Jefferson, Hamilton, and Burr, and General Washington. The war never interested me. I don't know why. For one thing, Washington never really won a battle, so it's kind of hard to put much of a spin on that, as they say nowadays. He had an eerie gift for military failure. I mean, he let the entire British Army get away from Philadelphia. He was walking in the wrong direction, and he was a great character. He hung on and hung on. He held the country together. We wouldn't have had a country had he not been there. But it was just sheer endurance, and if the French hadn't come to our aid at Yorktown, we might still be British.
As an author, how do you distinguish between historical fiction and fictionalized history?
Well, who hasn't? I'm very divided. I sometimes enjoy those things that you see on television, you know, Richardson's agony as he goes through Watergate and which lie shall I tell today, and but then you say, well, how could they know that he said this or said that, you know? Because there has to be a degree of invention, or if not that, you have to tighten things up. And I wonder really about the wisdom of doing public events that are so close to us. When you're 100 years ago, I think you're free to try to guess at motives, which is the one thing that nobody ever gives you. Certainly not the great man himself. I mean, Lincoln is endlessly mysterious and really close-mouthed. He only had one friend in his life, his law partner, Herndon, who 17 years they were in the same office, and he talked pretty candidly to him. But Herndon said, I never knew him. He said his ambition was like a little clock going tick, tick, tick. He thought of nothing but power to come. And so you've got to imagine it. You just have to put yourself in his place and say, well, what was going on that day when he made such and such a decision? And that is where the historian, at a certain point, becomes an artist.
What do you think of a potential speaker, Newt Gingrich, and why do you think the country is moving more to the right?
Oh, this is a very right-wing country. It always has been. It's just sometimes is noisier than other times. He's the kind of standard politician. He will either self-destruct or he will become like Dole. If you remember, I loved Dole when he was, the mean Dole when he was running for vice president was a great, great joy. And then he decided he had to be more compassionate, you know, and more loving of the people at large. And his voice has become a little phony now. God, he can be funny. I was on television with Dole about the time when Admiral Inman, you remember him when he free associated for 1 hour on television on about how much he hated William Safire and Senator Dole, and they were conspiring to get him. And right after that, I was on Charlie Rose with Dole, and I said, this is very interesting. I said, first of all, it was wonderful to watch Inman. Dole said, yeah, I like that too. And I said, imagine having a whole hour on television to complain. I mean, I'd pay a lot for that. Dole said, I'd need more than an hour. And then I said, now, the picture of you and Sapphire conspiring against Inman and the administration, you're both fairly well known, at least Senator Dole, your face is recognizable. Where do you meet? Is there a Taco Bell near the Capitol? Don't say, no. The Nixon Library. There's never anyone there.
We are unfortunately about out of time. Before asking the last question, I'd like to present you, of course, with a certificate of appreciation for being here and the ever-popular Press Club mug.
Oh, that mug.
Now, the fact of the matter is, if you have spoken here several times, your father spoke here, and your grandfather spoke here, there must be a complete set of National Press Club china in the Gore household.
Yeah, and unbreakable, too.
You're right.
Thank you.
And the last question sent up is, what did you and Hillary talk about at dinner last night?
You, the press.
That it?
That's it.
That's it. And I'm sure she only said nice things about us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all will be back very soon.
Gore Vidal addressed members of the National Press Club Friday. Mr. Vidal has written numerous works that involve the process of using history as a backdrop for fiction. Several of his more prominent works are Gore Vidal's Lincoln, An Evening with Richard Nixon, and Myra Breckinridge. Tonight